right, joined now by Shamit Dua of the In the N.O Substack and In the N.O Podcast. Make sure to go check out all of his New Orleans Pelicans coverage, as he does a great job over there and covering for the Alley-Oop. Really appreciate you stopping by, Shamit. We're doing this for the new year, so happy new year to everybody, and let's make 2024 great. Let's make 2024 great for the Pelicans, man. This could be an opportunity, getting healthy and 15-8 since the 5-game losing streak that was mired with injuries. 19-14 record overall. What are you learning about the Pelicans during the stretch?
Yeah, I think last we talked, they were kind of struggling to find themselves a bit, but it was more of a, hey, we need them to hold on until the cavalry arrives. And the cavalry has arrived in a big way, and the Pelicans have been largely successful in the meantime. I know there's been a few high-profile losses that have led to some existential questions, most notably losing in the semifinals of the IST to the Los Angeles Lakers. That was a pretty embarrassing loss on national television with how it went down and kind of the fanfare around it. And the conversation it generated regarding Zion, which I thought was, I thought it started off in a good place with Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley commenting the way they commented, and I think it spiraled completely out of control with Stephen A. Smith leading the way. But the Pelicans, as you mentioned, they have a winning record. They are a pretty solid team. Like, they're a good team. I think there's just questions about how they execute in crunch time. I believe they lead the league in double-digit leads blown. If not, they're top 3 in that metric. They are not very good in crunch time situations. They have one of the worst offensive ratings in those situations. And so there's things they need to clean up despite being a solid team all around.
Yeah, a lot of the numbers will say solid team all around, and they've improved, obviously, since getting some reserves back, since getting guys back into the lineup. 19-14 record, 8th in net rating, 15th in offense, 8th in defense. So you can see, especially like with the regular season, kind of the first 45 minutes or so of the game, that the offense is pretty good. It's pretty solid. There's like, what you're going to get from Zion. You know what you're going to get from Brandon Ingram in those situations. And CJ McCollum helps out a little bit. But the crunch time might be a problem, and it might be a problem in a playoff situation as well. So I'm curious to see how that evolves and if that's something that they can figure out over time. Is there something else that's important that national folks are kind of missing that local folks have really kind of tapped into over the course of this stretch?
Yeah, so credit to Zach Lowe. He picked up on the crunch time offense stuff. He wrote about it this past week. I think it flows into what I believe has been a reluctance from the coaching staff to play their shooting lineups or shooting heavy lineups together more often, to prioritize shooting. I think this has been a 3-year pattern since Willie Green has been a part of the Pelicans. He will prioritize defense over shooting. And it's I don't know. I wonder if it's unfair to paint it that way, because like I think if he had like elite defenders who were also elite shooters, he would happily put those guys on the court. Right. But like when it comes to would he rather play a B+ defender or an A shooter? I think he plays the B+ defender. And that's kind of been the equation for this coaching staff for the last 3 years, and I think it's a little short-sighted. Obviously they're 8th in defense, and that's important, but ironically what they've shown is they can build a good defense just about out of any kind of personnel that they've put out there. They've had one of the most changing lineups since Willie Green has gotten here, with the number of injuries they've had, right? With Zion missing time, with Brandon Ingram missing time, with CJ being traded into the team, but also missing time. The only person that really hasn't missed time is Jonas Valanciunas. And yet, no matter what configuration they throw out there, they have shown that they can consistently defend in the half-court setting. Though, where they get in trouble is when they start turning the ball over. And I think that's any team, right? When you start turning the ball over, it's really difficult to defend in transition. And so a lot of their defensive issues, when they do end up having them, are offense-related. They're not scoring. They're turning the ball over. It's missed shots leading to runouts on the other end, that kind of stuff. And so I would really like there to be a focus on fixing the offense that like you mentioned, they're 15th.
Yeah.
However, with the personnel they have, they should be way better than 15th, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion.
No, I agree. There's so much talent on this group, and you see it when guys go in and out of the lineup that you have opportunities for Jordan Hawkins and Matt Ryan and Jose Alvarado's come back. Trey Murphy, we know, is a stud. Like, he's amazing. Then Larry Nance Jr. is somebody who I think the national folks have barely talked about, but he's been an important member of the New Orleans Pelicans roster for the last few years. So I think that there is some stuff there, but I also think we should probably zero in on the starting lineup. You've mentioned this online, and I did some prior research. I didn't even see your tweets until after I researched this. CJ, Herb, Zion, Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas. They've Valanciunas has played every single game, which is great. Other guys have been in and out. Minus 7.2 net rating in 421 possessions on cleaning the glass. That is not good, and kind of crazy for a team when you put your best five out there. How hot is the temperature on changing that group, and what would you change if you could?
In my opinion, the temperature is not hot enough. That starting group has been negative the whole season. There's only been 4 instances in which they have outscored whoever's out in front of them. Only 4, and those 4 instances were twice against San Antonio, which is just a terrible team. Once against Philadelphia, who was missing Embiid that night. So again, a terrible team without Embiid. And once against Minnesota, who was missing Anthony Edwards. So it's just the last night, New Year's Eve, they played the Lakers. They had a wonderful game. They, kind of ran them out the building. CJ McCollum was going bananas from 3, right? Despite that level of shot making and that level of offense, that starting lineup for once was good offensively. They had 129 offensive rating. Their defensive rating was 132. They still got outscored. So it's just even when things were going well, they managed to get themselves outscored. And this is a lineup where people constantly argue. In my opinion, what needs to change is Herb Jones needs to be replaced with Trey Murphy. They need to lean into the shooting. They need to lean into the spacing for their main guys. And they need to focus on being an offensive first team with that particular unit. They have enough defenders to kind of balance it out over the course of 48 minutes. But with that particular unit, they need to focus on their strengths, which is offense. And I think they'll be able to defend adequately when they're playing more half-court defense, because right now that unit has a defensive rating of 118.
Yeah.
So everyone tells me you need Herb Jones in there for defense. You need him in there. You need him in there. You need him in there. And look, I love Herb Jones. I've loved him since the draft. But it's doing him no favors in being in that lineup where he's continually asked to just chuck up threes because the other guys don't, and they need the spacing. And then, because there is no spacing, there's more turnovers and more missed shots and more people in the paint and at the rim that prevent, Zion and BI from getting to the spots they want to. And the defense is simply not carrying over. We are running into the second year in a row where the Pelicans are better on defense when Herb Jones sits. That should not be the case. And to me, that's not an indictment of Herb Jones and his defensive impact. It's an indictment of the lineup construction. It's an indictment.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, just based off of the outside perspective, where you have Zion, who is a challenged defender at times. You have Jonas Valanciunas, who's just he's a big center. He's a big body. He's going to get cooked in space at times. That's we know that from Jokic. That, and you can still win a championship that way, but you have to have the right context and you have to play the right lineups. And I also see CJ as one of those weaknesses too. I'm sure that you've seen that, and it's not like Brandon Ingram is not the perfect defender either by any stretch. So there are reasons for that, and it comes down to ceiling. It comes down, in my opinion, to what is the best way to maximize your group? What's the best way to make the best of the situation that you have? And I do agree that Trey Murphy's awesome, and he would be a great option for that. And it just makes sense, I think, logically, because I see that's where the direction of the team is likely to go. And he's just the right ideal person to provide the right spacing and win the minutes. That's all you should be trying to do, is win the minutes. And if you're not winning the minutes, then that's an indictment.
Yeah, it's really all it comes down to is those first 6 minutes of the game, the first 6 minutes of coming out of halftime. And those first 6 minutes of coming out of their halftime are where they are especially bad. I had
Mm.
this stat real quick. Give me 1 second here and I will pull it up. Their net rating in the second half, that particular lineup is here we go, it's running. It's running. I guess it's deciding not to run. But it's to the tune of like -18. Like
Oh,
it is absurd how bad that lineup is in the second half of games, and it's mostly because teams come out of the locker room. They're like, you know what? There's one capable shooter in that lineup, and that's CJ McCollum. And I'm not counting Brandon Ingram as a capable shooter because he doesn't shoot them, right? If he was a willing shooter, I would count him as a capable one. So I think there's a difference, right? There's one capable shooter, and that's CJ McCollum. So they come out of halftime. Every coach is like, you know what? Let's make Herb Jones beat us. Let's JV shoot threes, right? And so they just stand in the paint. They often run zone, which the zone preplexes the team. I don't want to say it preplexes them. There's just not enough spacing for the Pelicans to really do much against the zone. Sometimes they get going. Sometimes they're able to shred, but like it really depends on if CJ's hitting those outside shots and they're able to find him on a routine basis.
mm.
So yeah, I mean, like it's tough. They're one of the worst second half lineups in the league, period. And I think they need to embrace the change here. And if the complaint is, oh well, that puts too many of our defenders on the bench and we can't balance the bench, that's the job for the front office to fix. Go trade some of those guys,
Yeah.
right?
But also,
I,
like,
I think I think I think they
I
can
got
layer
for
in
sure,
the
right?
offense.
Like, Jordan Hawkins is great. I've watched him and Matt
He's
Ryan.
out of the rotation.
Yeah,
He
like
is
it's
not playing.
that's
He's
frustrating.
completely
I
out of
can
the rotation. They
understand.
sent him to the G League. They had to bring him back because Trey Murphy was experiencing knee soreness, which is, I wouldn't want to say it's a long term concern. It's just residuals of coming back from surgery. You're going to have some of
Sure.
those days. But like, Hawkins is out of the rotation, and to what end? Right? That's a guy you're going to need in the playoffs. That's a guy that you're going to need next to your best players. So like, I like how Denver did it with Christian Braun. Like last year, Braun, those minutes weren't great. Like if I remember correctly, like they were losing the Braun minutes, but they were like, you know what, we're okay. Like this is an investment.
Right.
We're gonna that's something we can accept to lose. And to be fair, it's a lot easier to accept loss in those minutes when you have the best player in the world because he's gonna win every other all the other minutes, right?
True.
And and
It
and that
definitely
drives
helps.
the conversation back to the Pelican stars and the starting unit. And I think if you are able to build a good starting unit that maximizes those stars, you're going to have more opportunities to experiment with guys like Jordan Hawkins, right? But if you're continually putting out a lineup in the first 6 minutes of the half, on the first 6 minutes of the second half, they're losing those minutes. You're not going to want to experiment in the second and fourth quarters because you're desperately trying to win those minutes back. And so it's just like, I don't know. It's a problem that they need to solve yesterday, and it should be louder. And I feel like I am the only person in the New Orleans media sphere that is like concerned about this or even talking about this. But yeah, they're lucky I'm on crutches and I'm not in those press rooms because I'd be asking the question.
Sorry to hear that, man. It's that could be a frustrating one for sure. No, I wonder if it's just everybody's. Hey, we're happy that we're whole now. We're happy that we're good. We're happy that we're going in the right general direction, even if there is some micromanaging that probably needs to happen in order to maximize what's going on. I can understand that too. But I also I know why this is an important time for this because the expiration date's kind of on the Zion, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum trio. That's kind of like reaching its point at this stage where you're wanting to see what this team does in the playoffs, and then you're probably making some big decisions after that. So I can understand why you got to figure some stuff out, and you want to maximize as much as you can.
Can you
Do you think?
imagine like
Go ahead.
ending this era without surrounding them with as much shooting as possible? Like I would go crazy if that is what ended up happening. And I think there's a non-zero chance where we do hit the end of the season and they never bother to make those changes. And you're like, all right, cool, we're going in a different direction. That'd just be terrible. By the way, those stats updated. They are minus 20.3 in the second half. 105 offensive rating, which is puke worthy, but what is more vomit inducing is 125.3 defensive rating in second half. So like they're
Yeah,
just bad. That's a bad lineup. It's not even like, they're about net neutral. No, they're just horrifyingly bad. So it's like, just move on.
Yeah, to me, that's an energy thing too. I wonder if they just don't necessarily believe in that group, like being good in those minutes, especially on the defensive end. I'm not sure.
I think it's coaching.
Man, last thing I got for you. Team, they've showed that they can be good. I'm not sure if they've shown they can be great. I'm not sure if that's the goal even this year, because based off of where we're kind of having those conversations, it was about putting Zion into a good place to succeed, putting Brandon Ingram in a good place to succeed, and kind of seeing where it goes from there. Do you think that this is something that they could try to address at the trade deadline, just making a big move and trying to push all in and attack what is kind of a slightly weaker Western Conference than I think a lot of people expected, maybe a more open Western Conference than a lot of people expected?
I wouldn't say they're going to go all in. I don't think they've ever had the gusto to make that kind of a move. I do think they are happy to shuffle around pieces, and the one name that keeps popping up, the one that I feel like they're going to continue to pursue is Jared Allen. So like I feel like JV, Jared Allen, plus salary, assets, whatever, something around there is going to change and turn into a Jared Allen or Jared Allen style of player. And I hope, because there's a more mobile big, that allows them to be more comfortable with starting Trey Murphy in the starting lineup, because you have your defender in the lineup now. But it's a little bit, I would shudder at the thought of spacing with Herb Jones and Jared Allen and Zion and BI out there. But I know Willie Green will try. I know he will. I know he will.
Just got to make sure it doesn't work. Just got to make sure.
Yeah, so I don't count that as an all-in trade. I count that as hey, JV is a very good player. He's a 31-year-old expiring. We need to kind of set ourselves up for the future. Let's go get someone that's under contract for a few years. So that's just a, hey, this makes sense type of move, not a we're going all in type of move. I can't anticipate them doing that. The guy that I'm pushing for is Trae Young, right? That's my personal agenda. I don't think he's going to be available at the deadline. I would be shocked if the Hawks kind of blow it up at this deadline, but I wouldn't be shocked if they decided to blow it up this summer. So it's like, put yourself in a position. You get Jared Allen now. Ooh, what's a really good guard to pair with him? I think Trae Young's a really good guard to pair with him down the line. So that's how I'm thinking.
Not bad. That seems like if you don't give up Brandon Ingram and Zion, you probably have to give up Trey Murphy. But I mean, maybe you don't. They've got so many wings that they don't know what to do with. So maybe
they have so many picks. That's all I gotta say.
Like Dyson Daniels. There's some stuff there. There's some interesting stuff there. I'm sure
Jordan Hawkins, the guy who's not in the rotation.
Hey, you gotta maximize. You gotta do what you gotta do. So
for inexplicable reasons, yeah.
Yeah, well, we will see. I'm still like, look, this team, they have exceeded my own personal expectations that I set in the preseason. I didn't think that they would be this good at this point, and they've survived and they've thrived over the course of these last, I want to say 23 games or so. There are some things that can see whether they improve or not, but I'm looking forward to seeing whether they can. So should be fun. He is Shamit Dua of the In the N.O Substack and In the N.O Pod. Thank you so much for hopping on, man. Really appreciate it. We'll chat just after the deadline, all right?
Yeah, absolutely.